Hi, I'm Eva Montalvo. My company is Nourish Yoga and Wellness. Today's video is about the pose downward facing dog. If you're familiar with it, you may have seen lots of pictures of it. And if not, we'll go through this as we move through these different variations of it. Essentially, our body makes an L shape while we're hinged at the hips. And lots of effects from that. So the intention is to lengthen across the back of the body, and we get some other benefits from it as well. As you can see, I have a wrist brace, so I'm not going to be doing much that actually involves full weight on the wrist. I'm going to show you different ways to do downward facing dog. I like to start with a warm-up, so just take the shoulders and roll them up and back and down. Inhaling and exhaling, and then alternating one shoulder and then the other. Good. So we start to find a little twisting movement. If you want to go bigger with the arms, you can. Getting really into those shoulder joints. And then reversing, so we're going opposite direction as if we were swimming through water. Good. All right, and then just a little side bend, one direction. And side bend the other direction. Feel free to go a little more if you want to, and then twisting one direction and the other direction. So keeping a long neutral spine through these poses, and then as we come through center, rounding and curling to our cat pose, and lengthening and extending, drawing those shoulders back, chest forward into our cow pose. So take a couple of those. And then come back to neutral. And then to warm up the ankles, just lift the heels, lift the toes. And if you're standing, you can do the same thing by doing one at a time. Maybe easier, okay? So just playing with that. So because we're gonna start to use the ankles, the backs of the legs, and really opening up, stretching out through the hamstrings. And let's go ahead and do that warm up. So I'm going to turn sideways so you can see, extend the right leg or left leg, and then hinge forward. Again, you can choose whichever leg you want to. And just notice there's a little bend in that knee for me, because I'm not really trying to go very, very straight, but I'm still keeping my spine relatively long. And then back up, and then second side. Just tune into your breath. Notice how you're feeling in these initial stretches that we're doing. Good. And then coming back up. Good. Shake out the legs a little bit and tap out the feet. Good. Okay, so first variation is in the chair. I'm going to turn sideways so you can see what I'm doing, but you would be sitting in your chair and leaning forward. So keep your spine long, hands on thighs, and just hinge at your hips until you get to a variation where you feel strong through the core, back muscles. So this is beginning of downward facing dog. If you wanted to add, one hand reaches up and forward, and you even flex through the palm as if you were pushing the wall away. Good. And then switch, come back to upright. And then as you hinge forward, opposite arm. Good. And so if you were near a wall where you could turn to face the wall, a nice variation would be to take both arms, press your palms into the wall, and let your chest come forward a bit more. And that can be a really good variation. I just don't have the capacity to show that in this room. All right, and let's add the legs. So one leg, lean forward, and you can do the same arm or the opposite arm. And maybe the other arm's helping you hold on to the chair. And switch, opposite leg, and again choosing the same arm or opposite arm. So we're imagining that we are pushing away, lifting through the rib cage, at the same time getting really long all the way from our hand down to our tailbone here. Even the head is more neutral. And then come back up. And then if you're feeling fairly steady and can do both legs, lean forward. And maybe one arm or both arms. Just making sure you feel steady and secure in your chair. Good, and then come back up. So that's the shape we're making in downward facing dog, making an L shape where the bend comes right at our hips. I have a good bend in my knees because of the tightness of my hamstrings and making sure that my back is nice and safe, my low back is nice and safe. All right, come back to center. Good, so if you want to stick with that one, you can kind of just shake it out. And I'm going to continue to demonstrate other variations. So making our way to standing position, but still keeping our chair. Before we do that, I want to really come into more of a warm up here. So I'm going to change my camera angle just a little so you can see my upper part. All right. And then from our standing position, maybe just kind of take the hips side to side. Good, and then find a side bend one direction and a side bend the other direction. Good, and then taking those big shoulder movements again, allowing our body to twist. And then reverse. Good. All right, and then just to warm up the knees, bend the knees, warm up the knees and the ankles, circle the knees around, and then take it around the other way. Good. From that position, begin to fold only at your hips, bring your hands to your thighs, and start to see how this bend feels for you, keeping it only halfway, the head's not dropping low. Good. You may find that it helps to bend the knees, come into a huddle, and then straighten. Now you might start to go a little deeper here, and then bend and straighten. Good. All right, bring your hands back to your hips, come back up. All right, so we're going to start with a lunge pose, and you can use your chair if you need for support or not, and step one foot forward. So I'm using my left foot forward, right foot back into a lunge. Left knee is bent, right leg is back. And instead of bringing my body upright, I'm going to lean my torso at the same angle as my back leg. So we start to get a sense of the length from the back of the head to the back of that heel on the right heel. So you can stay here, hands on chair, or arms reaching forward. Maybe even turning the palms forward as if you were pushing a wall away from you. So while you're here, lift the thigh, front of your thigh toward the thigh bone, and lift your lower belly and your rib cage in. So we're doing a little bit of core work while we're in this lunge pose. Good, and then come back up, step the back foot forward. Good, second side. Left foot steps back, right knee bends. And then we're leaning the torso forward, one long line from the crown of the head back to the heel. You can press back with the heel if you'd like. Hug the thigh up, lift the rib cage. And your hands can either stay on the chair or you take one arm up or both arms up. Good. All right, and then step it forward. Good. I like to take a wide leg forward fold here, just kind of letting yourself drape a little bit, shake it out, just to kind of offset some of this energy that accumulates when we hold these stronger poses. And then come back up. Good. All right. So now when we put those two together, we can have our hands on the back of the chair. And I like to take my hands as wide as possible. Ideally, if you have a countertop, kitchen countertop, bathroom countertop, that's even better because you can take your hands slightly wider. But for the back of the chair, we're just going to go here. And then step back, stretch out your arms, stretch out your back, but keep your knees slightly bent to find the length in the spine first. Let the ears drop so that Your ears are between your arms and the neck is neutral. Again, lift the lower belly, little bend in the knees. 2 rounds of breath here. Maybe it feels good to bring one heel up and then the other. And then look forward, step forward, and a nice counter pose to that is a gentle back bend, lifting the chest, reaching the arms back. Good. And then release. Beautiful. So that's this another variation with using the chair. The next one would be using hands on the seat of the chair rather than on the back of the chair. So again, you proceed with whatever ones feel best for your body today. So you can actually start with a little bit of a sun salutation. Inhale, arms reach out and up. Exhale, swan dive, forward fold. Good. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, forward fold. Bring your hands to the seat of the chair and then step back, lifting the hips up and back. Good. Pause, 2 rounds of breath. Good. Then look forward and step forward. Good. Come back to upright again, finding that little gentle back bend as a counter pose, and then release. Good. All right. So those are some favorite variations I have. To go a little further into that, I've got some notes here on how I like to do these. Is to come into our, from a standing position. I like to do wide leg. This is actually called a different pose. It's called elephant pose, but I think it's the same idea. So with legs wide, and I have 2 blocks. You may not need blocks. You can also bring the front of your chair in front of you so that you have the seat of the chair facing you. But with feet wide and parallel to each other. Hands on hips and then hinge forward. Keeping the spine nice and long. Now bring your hands to your blocks. And I'm going to turn it sideways so you can see what's going on here. So we're going to walk the blocks out. And the blocks are about shoulder width or even wider. And so there's very little weight with my hands on those blocks. And then just reach the hips up and back. Keep a good bend in the knees. Continue to lift at the rib cage. And to lift at the thigh muscles as if you were hugging the bone. So here's our elephant pose. You can pause here, take a few breaths. And then if you want to, let go by letting yourself hang in a forward fold. Rounding through the spine. Bring your hands to your hips to start to come out of the pose. Come up slowly. Good. And exploring one more version of that shape, if we go halfway down, keep that core engaged, then we could reach arms out and forward as if we were pushing a wall away. And now we have nothing that we're holding on to, so we have to use our core. So inhale, exhale, forward fold. Bring your hands to your hips, slowly come back up. Good, heel toe the feet together. Good, maybe it feels good to take that gentle back bend again. Good, and maybe it feels good to swing it out. So just take a moment. Got a couple more variations to play with today. And so I encourage you to try any and all, and then decide what works for you. These are just different things I've learned through the years as I've had shoulder issues and wrist issues and things like that. Okay, so second, or I don't know how many we're on now, next variation. Using the chair again is now using more of a shoulder, what we call shoulder plank. Before we do that, let's do hands, elbows together, and then out, and then together, and then out, like into our cactus. Inhale, open, exhale, push up. In, exhale, in. So inhale, and then push, and together. And last one. Kind of feeling that strength in your shoulders, the upward movement, all right? And then just kind of shaking it out. Okay, so the other thing when I'm trying to keep my weight off my wrist is now I'm going to use my forearms, okay? So the idea is we're going to bring the forearms to the chair, and you can clasp your hands together so that you're making a little bit of a V shape, okay? But let's start in mountain pose and do our half sun salutation. So inhale, arms reach out and up. Exhale, swan dive, forward fold. Good. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, forward fold. Bring your forearms to the chair. Clasp your hands together. And then step one foot back into that lunge. You're going to try and lower your hips down. And then keep, again, the rib cage in, thigh hugging in. Notice how this feels on your shoulders, and so if it feels very intense, then you're not going to want to do more than just one leg back. And then step the right leg forward, or whichever one you had back, and then switch other side. So we're going to start to move into what we call a forearm plank. Good. Both forward. And first we'll come into our dolphin pose, which is like downward facing dog with elbows down. So we're going to step the legs back, little bend in the knees. And notice that this is quite a bit of movement or a lot of weight through the shoulders. So you can just keep it a little gentler if you want to. And you could even do a few push-ups here, shoulder push-ups, sagging the chest and shoulders down and then pushing back away. Good. All right, and then let's come out for a moment. I just want to give those shoulders a little break. I'm still healing in my shoulders from an injury. All right, and then I'm going to give you a few more options you can try from there. So again, inhale, arms reach out and up. Exhale, swan dive, forward fold. Inhale, come up halfway. Exhale, forward fold. Place your forearms on your chair. Step back. This time we're stepping back into plank pose, lowering the hips, pushing up through the shoulders, elbows. Good. And then walking the feet in a little closer, taking the hips up and back to dolphin. And if you're feeling like it, you could do one more round of that. Legs reach out, walk out, lower the hips, pushing away, and then dolphin pose. Good. And then step the feet forward. Inhale, come up. Reverse your swan dive, lift up. Beautiful. And then hands to heart. Good. So you're starting to feel a lot of warmth through the shoulders, the core, anything. That's kind of normal. Dolphin pose, even though it saves the wrist, puts more work on the shoulders. Okay, so swing it out, anything you'd like to from here. All right, and then finally we're going to move into our down to the mat. So a couple of ways. You can come to the mat any way you want to. We're going to eventually make our ways to hands and knees. So if you need some padding, grab a blanket to place under your knees. I'm going to keep my blocks nearby because I'm going to try to use blocks instead of wrists. Okay, forearms instead of wrists. So I'm just going to make my way, hands and knees, moving my chair out of the way. And since I don't want to have my wrists on the ground, I'm actually going to take my forearms to the ground or to the blocks. So I'm on a shape where I am elbows beneath shoulders, knees beneath hips, okay? So you can pause here, you can take it around in a circle and reverse. If you're okay with hands and knees, you can be on your wrists and then just take this in some circles. I'm just going to stay off of that. And then a really nice rest pose is to take the knees wider and the hips back into child's pose. So we'll come back to that. All right, now I'm going to take that dolphin pose that we did on the chair, and your elbow forearms can be on the block, hands together, clasped together. So it's going to look something like this. Or you can move the blocks and do this on the ground. It's just a bigger angle. So I'm going to keep the blocks. All right, so now tucking the toes. Actually, let's just do one leg back. So here's our half plank. Pressing one foot back, feeling that back of the leg engaged. And then switch sides, the other leg. Good, all right. And then finally, tuck the toes, lift up through the hips, and walk the feet in a little closer as needed. Bigger stretch in the underarms, push away with your elbows, lift your rib cage. Good. Come out of that anytime you need to. Knees down, back to child's pose. I'll show you one more variation of this particular dolphin pose, from dolphin to plank pose. So lift up, downward dolphin pose. And then walking the feet back, bring your shoulders back over your elbows into plank, lowering the hips. And then maybe you take it one more time. Up to dolphin, back to plank. Take a rest when you need to. Knees come down. Reach back with your hips. You can take your elbows onto those blocks and hands into reverse prayer. Or if your shoulders are tired, you can simply let your arms drape alongside. Great. All right, so those are all the variations I practice currently. I will briefly demonstrate a traditional downward facing dog, but it's just not something I can do much these days. So now, from hands and knees, and you can see I'm just only using the fingers on my left side, not my wrist. Good. Tuck the toes. I like to really spread my fingers wide, and my hands are even a little wider than my shoulders, okay? Good. Tuck the toes, lift the hips, push up and back. There's our downward facing dog. Again, you can walk your dog or pause and breathe, 3 rounds of breath. Good. And then bring your knees down. Phew. Take a rest. Child's pose. Good. And then, beautiful. Have a seat when you're ready. So those are just all the different variations. You know, you can move your wrists around, let go of some of the tension that builds in the hands, the forearms. Roll the shoulders out. Noticing how that feels. Good. Maybe taking a forward fold with feet in butterfly. Choosing for a moment to just let go of any tension you've created in your body, knowing that we've worked different parts of the body for length and some parts of the body for strength. So that's downward facing dog. I hope this was helpful for you to try different variations of it. Please let me know how you feel. Have a great day.